Good afternoon, everyone. Everyone sufficiently creeped out? Thanks. Thank you so much for coming out this afternoon. My name's Jenelle Riley. I'm so thrilled to welcome you. I don't mean to humble brag, but I've seen the first 4 episodes, and it just gets better and better. So please join me in welcoming the cast and one of the shows, actually directed the pilot as well, of Mr. Mercedes. I want to start by introducing the young actor who is so terrifying. You've seen him in Penny Dreadful and films like Honeymoon. Please welcome Harry Treadaway. An actor you know from JAG and 2 of the best shows on TV, 3, Fear the Walking Dead and Legion. Please welcome Scott Lawrence. This actress is kind of a hometown hero. I'm from Oregon, and Drugstore Cowboy was the greatest thing to ever come out of there. You've also seen her in the series Magic City and 90210, Kelley Lynch. There is no one who doesn't adore this actress. She is a Emmy Award winner and 7-time nominee. Please welcome Holland Taylor. An actor. I'm pushing him to direct, that's why I said that. He has appeared in so many of my favorite films, from In Bruges to Calvary to I Freaking Love Lake Placid. If you haven't seen it, please see it. Please welcome Brendan Gleeson. And finally, the gentleman who has directed all of your favorite shows, including Lost, Game of Thrones, and The Sopranos. Please welcome Jack Bender.
I still have my SAG card.
Do you really?
I really do.
Well, then that's great, because I always like to start by asking, because this is a SAG audience, how did you get your SAG card? And you get to answer as well.
Why don't you start with these guys?
All right, we'll start down on the end.
Deserve their SAG card.
We'll start with Harry then.
How did I get my SAG card?
Yeah, what was the project?
This.
Are you serious?
I only got it this year. Yeah.
I mean, because you've been doing...
Naughty.
Get out.
No, I'm English, so I didn't have it for a while, and then I did do a project where they were like, okay, you have to do it now, and so I did do it then.
Thanks.
Which wasn't actually this, it was a reshoot for something which I did. God, is this... Yeah, I think this is okay that I'm saying this.
As long as you have it now, it's good.
Anyway, I've got one. Yay.
It's so awesome you're going to get screeners this year.
Cool.
Scott, for you?
SAG card? There was a movie with Tom Hanks and Sally Field called Punchline.
I love that movie.
And they needed it was about stand-up comedians, and they needed some people in the audience to do comebacks to, hey, where are you from? Georgia. You hired that guy. That was my audition. Georgia. The rest is history.
And you aced it. That was great.
Yeah, I could do it again. Kansas. Yeah, better? Yeah. I'm working on the read.
Bright Lights, Big City was my, yeah.
It's amazing. Holland?
It was so long ago that I'm not sure. But I think it was no, it wasn't. I think it was JT, which was made for television, in which Kevin Hooks played this little kid, and I was his teacher in like kindergarten. I think that was it. JT. Jane Wagner wrote it. It was her first.
Oh, you're kidding.
Yeah, I just stumbled into that. I think that was the first.
I think mine was Turbulence.
Oh.
Yeah, which is a very interesting movie about a plane Yeah, I got a SAG card for that.
Wait, I actually love that movie because I love movies set in small environments, and this is Ray Liotta kidnaps a plane, basically.
Ray
holds a
Liotta,
hostage.
yeah, and
Who
Lauren
are you?
Holly. I was a kind of a southern cracker kind of guy who tried to open the door at 38,000 feet. I said, there's no over the top in this. I was an escaped convict, and actually, when I went into the audition in New York, when I went over first, I went over for Michael Collins or something, and I did an awful American accent. And I remember Ian Hart saying, I rang him that evening. I said, "Oh, jeez," I said, "it was just appalling what came out of my mouth." And he said, "I know, I'm after doing the same. I drove home with my teeth," he said, like this. And but the audition was all about going across the border in Canada. These convicts escaping, and it was all that. So anyway, I said, well, that's gone. And then I come out to LA, and they said, they want you to go in again, but try Southern this time. And this time you're on a plane. There's nothing to do with going to Canada. You're on a plane going from LA to New York, or New York to LA, I can't remember. And one way or another you take over the plane or try to. So it was brilliant. It was really brilliant. It was kind of magical. And I just remember seeing the rushes for the first time, seeing the dailies. And it was the first time I understood different perspectives. Everybody saw the same scene, but nobody saw the same scene. And yeah, it was great. We had a great experience.
Which is why it was called Turbulence.
Absolutely, yeah. And it was like, I didn't know if they were going to have, you know, they have the kind of thing we have to do. We actually had to go back and do the thing with no bad language in case they show it on a plane.
Sure.
And no turbulence.
No turbulence, and fellas falling out of overseat lockers and everything like that, and blood and guts. That was great crack.
Why would they show turbulence on a plane? That is a
Yeah, I know.
terrible idea.
Terrible idea.
Can you still do the Southern accent?
I do, but only in private.
And Jack, for you?
There were TV shows, like I was a theater director then, but I was supporting myself doing television in my late teens. And back then it was, every other show was either a heroin addict or a campus radical. You know, so once a year, once a TV season, I'd get a Mod Squad guest starring part, and that and unemployment checks would keep me going, and I'd funnel them into the plays I was directing. And one really quick thing was I read for Make Room for Granddaddy, which was Danny Thomas's last incarnation of Make Room for Daddy. And I learned something as an actor. And that is that I walked in the room, and Richard Crenna, may he rest in peace, was the producer, and Danny Thomas was there and said, yeah, you got the hair, it's going to be good. Okay, so Danny goes, all right, in the scene, I'm at the piano singing, and Marjorie is there, and the doorbell rings, and I stop playing the piano, and I walk to the door, and I put my glasses down, and you're standing there, and my first line is, hello, Mr. Thomas, is Angela ready? I'm taking Angela Cartwright out. So I go, I'm about to say my line. And he goes, yeah, you come to the door. I look at you, and then you say, hello, Mr. Thomas, is Angela here? Oh, we'll change that line. And I go, okay. And then he continues. I won't go through the whole scene because we have a lot to talk about. He read every single line. And I realized if I shut up, I'll get the part. And at the end of the last line, where Danny Thomas walks me to the door and says, "Oh, will you say, Mr. Thomas, thank you, nice meeting you. I'll have Angela home by 10:30, sir." And then you walk out, and he took his glasses off and he said, "Yeah, good." It was just as he heard it in his head, because it was. And that was one of my early
That is a great
parts.
story.
Sad but true.
So here we are years later with Mr. Mercedes. This is one of the few Stephen King books I actually haven't read. I probably read about half of them. Yeah, I mean, that's still 300 books, so I can cut myself a little slack.
Yeah.
How did it find its way to you, and when did you first start envisioning it as a series?
Stephen King and I got to know each other on Lost. He was a major fan of that show. He then, we worked together on the first 2 seasons of Under the Dome, which I exec produced and directed a number of them, and then left that. But he and I stayed in contact. We tried to find something because we really wanted to do something together. One day in the mail, I got this big envelope, which was the galleys for an unpublished novel called Mr. Mercedes. He didn't tell me at the time it was a trilogy. I read it, loved it, and called him up and said, Stephen, this is great, I want to do it. He said, great. And I said, the actor who's born to play it is this actor named Brendan Gleeson. And as fate would have it, it's amazing that Brendan Gleeson plays Bill Hodges. And so that's really how it came to me. And the thing that struck me that would make a great series was a really character-driven show where Stephen King is writing about the monsters inside the characters, not outside the characters. And so, and that's what our show is, led by this astonishing cast. So that's how it, and then Sonar, and then finally DirecTV was the most passionate to make it, and here we are.
Was Stephen King, I mean, he was probably instantly familiar with Brendan Gleeson. Did he love the idea?
When I said Brendan Gleeson, he said to me, and I said, you know, he's in, and he read the list of all his movies.
Is that the guy from Turbulence?
It's his favorite movie. Yeah, not the guy from Turbulence. Yeah, Stephen was thrilled, and then coincidentally, his nephew read Mr. Mercedes and wrote to him a week later. It's great, it's going to be great. It'll make a great series, but you know, there's this actor named Brendan Gleeson who he really said that. So, and that began the journey.
Forgive me for not knowing, is the character American in the book?
Yes.
Okay, so, but they still thought, they were willing to make him Irish.
That was a process that really came from Brendan and feeling so close. You can talk about it to the part. Yeah.
I wanted to make him American actually, and I felt secure enough in it. I've done it a few times now, and the last thing I had done full American, there was another pilot. The only other time I did kind of a TV thing called The Money that David Milch had written, and I felt very easy in my skin about it at that point. I did a lot of sort of working with not allowing it to become a barrier, for it to be natural sounding as against just having the sounds right or anything. And I felt easy enough with it. And I was looking forward to the challenge of this one. And I felt he was an American everyman, which he kind of is. And it was when David really and Jack brought up the notion of playing him Irish. And I kind of resisted it in the beginning because I thought there was something quintessentially American about it. And then when I got over here, Mary Goff, who was kind of my right arm here, said, is it a layer you don't need? That was one thing that was kind of in my head. And then the other thing was we met a bunch of Irish people who had been here, some of whom had been here for 15 years, some of them been 30 or 40. And a lot of them, you know, it's as if they just got off the boat. There wasn't a shred of sort of anything other than who they were when they left in their accent. And with various other people had little bits and bobs in it. And I suddenly realized that you can be quintessentially American and have started off somewhere else. That's really what it's all about. So American Everyman is so I kind of thought, well, okay, well, let's remove the layer. We had a long chat about it, whether I would get away with it. I was a bit worried about the undercover thing, you know, like you'd go sniffing out some leads and somebody said, oh, you mean the Irish detective? Yeah, Sam the spy, you know. So it's like... It was like we had to work through, but it was what I didn't do is what I tried to do is allow that whatever modulations happen. It tends to happen to me here anyway. I was just talking to Harry about it too. Is that I tend to slow down when I'm here. I speak a little bit more slowly than I would at home, but also some of the vowels elongate anyway. And I used any of the terminology that I would have learned first in America, like a lot of the police terminology. I would always try to give the emphasis on the American way of saying it, because that's where I would have heard it first. So, you know, Stephen King at some point said that he forgot, or somebody he didn't even know, or his wife or somebody didn't know, somebody belonged to him didn't even know that there was an Irish thing.
That was our first episode.
Yeah. So it does kind of blend. It's not a million miles away anyway, the accents, you know. It depends on how much you brogue it up, I suppose.
And one thing directorially that was really important to me is that this, because it's such a character-driven piece, that I wanted the actors to have room to be completely and utterly, even though they're all exceptional at knowing lines and respectful of all that. But I wanted them to not be thinking about that stuff. And, so anything between Brendan and Bill Hodges, and the more he read the scripts, the more he felt that he could embody that fully. I didn't want to be saying, we got a little Irish in there, let's do another one. And in the case of Mr. Treadaway, who is, rumor has it, he's English, but does an impeccable American accent that, seemed to be easy and was never an issue except once or twice. I'm busy, one or two that my assistant is English, and she went, ooh, and I went, what? And like 2 times in 10 episodes. So I didn't want to be worrying about that, and I didn't want the actors to be worrying about that.
And for the rest of the cast, can you sort of tell me how this script found its way to you? And when you see the name Stephen King, you might have a certain image in your mind, and were you sort of surprised to learn that it is this really kind of intimate character study?
Oh, my character is not in the novel. So, and it's very interesting. I mean, Jack, if it's that interesting a subject, Jack can comment on it more fully than I can. But I got this sense from a few things that were said that it was thought that, it's one thing when we all read books and how much we bring our own vision of things to it because we are imagining it. But when it's up on a screen, you have sets and places, locations, people, flesh and blood, and it's very fully presented to you. And I think it was felt that you get this story that was in the first novel up on the screen, and it is so utterly bleak for Bill Hodges, the hero, to have no one who has an intimate, warm touch up close and personal, even though he rebuffs her.
That's not true.
Well, I mean, he wants to keep her at arm's length, but as you'll see through the remaining episodes, he's become somewhat more receptive to her just as a person in his life who has things she wants to share with him about caring for him as a person. And I think it was felt that it was just too harsh a world, too dark a world for him right at the get-go. So she's there, and it's a real privilege to be in it. And Stephen King writes wonderful characters, and so does David Kelley, for whom I've worked before. And so it was just falling into a pot of honey. And Brendan and Jack and the rest of the cast, it's just remarkable. It's a wonderful job.
It's so surprising to me to hear that the character wasn't in the book, because the moment with the photos, which is probably my favorite scene in the first episode, it feels like a Stephen King moment. He has that humor.
It's actually out of the mind of David Kelley.
Yeah.
And
Excuse me.
yes. And it's out of the mind of David Kelley, and I knew when I got David involved he would hit a home run with it, because David going down those dark alleys can do it with the best of them and twisted stuff. At the same time, he brings so much humanity and humor, as does Stephen King. I mean, Stephen King writes a lot of funny stuff. And so it was a perfect marriage.
And Kelley, for you?
It's my joining the cast. It was almost like a Schwab's moment, actually. Jack Bender and my husband Mitch Glazer were both nominated for Emmys. My husband for Murray Christmas, a Netflix Christmas special, and Jack for directing Game of Thrones. And they were both at Paul Smith looking at tuxedos. And Jack's amazingly talented and perceptive and psychic daughter, Hannah Bender, who was our brilliant costume designer, my husband looked at her hat she was wearing and said, "That's a great hat." And she said, I'll make one for you. And he said, I can't, I look like Bozo in hats, but my wife likes hats. She said, "Who's your wife?" And he said, "Kelly Lynch, the actress Kelly Lynch." And she turned around and screamed, "Dad, Kelly Lynch." Discovered, like an ingenue. But, I went through the whole, I read for the part, I fought for it. I mean, I don't know who else they were thinking about, but Jack said, we met, and Jack said, "We don't have a script yet, get the book, take a look at Deborah Hartsfield. She's an amazing character." And, she's one of the great female characters that Stephen King has ever written, as far as I can see. I mean, I just can't believe I got a chance to play her. And when I read for it, Denise Shamian, who's an amazing casting director, said, "Don't take this wrong, but you're perfect for Deborah Hartsfield." Still dealing with that a little bit in therapy, but other than that,
Let me just add that I think she has the most challenging acting situation in this thing that I've almost ever seen. I was actually fearful for her, just in her feelings, her emotionality when she plays certain scenes in this coming up.
Who ended up winning the Emmy that night?
Do we really want to discuss that?
Well, I'm wondering if
Never mind.
Things might
My
have been
wife
different.
at that Emmy said to me, "You know, you're sort of becoming the Susan Lucci of directors."
You've never won?
No, but we really don't have time for this. You know? Yeah, no,
It's just-
no,
it's when he does all his casting, he
you know
hanging
who
out in
won?
tuxedo
Miguel
shops.
Sapochnik for the other episode of Sopranos, the one with the big battle, which was beautifully done. That's who
Game of
won.
Thrones.
What did I say? Sopranos? Yeah, I didn't win for
Sopranos
that either.
is so good, they just
yeah,
keep
no,
giving it
Game of
Emmys.
Thrones. That's who
Oh,
won
Battle
that
of the
year.
Bastards.
And Battle of Bastards.
Oh.
And it was, oh, no wonder.
Well, it's
Let's get
pretty
back
impressive.
to Turbulence.
I was
have CDs
I
of
was in
Turbulence.
Turbulence, by the way.
Were
No, you
really?
weren't.
I was. I
Yeah,
did.
we discussed that in therapy.
did. Absolutely.
Were you Southern in that?
I did. I played a detective at the beginning who spies the bad guy and goes, "I got him." That was my role. That was me. Wow. Oh yeah,
great.
I was there. Turbulence.
Kansas, and I got him.
Wouldn't it be weird if everyone in our cast was in
I'm
Turbulence?
starting to wonder.
Wow.
So Scott, how did you mentioned you've played police officers before? How did this one find its way to you?
Done a few detectives in my day, and Denise Shaman. I fell backwards into this project. I'm still surprised to be sitting here. I had an audition with, aside from this show, along with this show, one at 12:30, this show at 1 o'clock. The previous audition was about 6 pages, a lot of dialogue, and I had to choose between sort of like learning this one and learning this show. I had to choose one. I chose the other. This one was about 2 guys sitting on a park bench eating a hot dog, so I said, I can kind of wing that one. So I did, and I went in, and I felt like I stumbled through it and kind of like made it to die at the end, and was surprised to get a phone call saying, "They think you're terrific." I was like, really? I changed my shirt literally on the street on Larchmont Boulevard, and walked into that right after the previous,
Wow.
and kind of went, and that was. The rest is history. So yeah, I'm happy to be here because I think I pulled one over on everybody. Yeah.
And were you familiar with the story?
When I got the audition, I wasn't familiar with anything. I don't even think Brendan was. I had known that Brendan was attached. I think I heard it was I wasn't, to answer your question. I had understood it was a Stephen King novel, and that was about all I knew. And it kind of happened fast. And I'm trying to just keep a low profile and
Harry?
What's the question?
How did the project find its way to you? And were you, you think certain things when you hear Stephen King.
Yeah, I was a big Stephen King fan from The Shining. I watched The Shining at 9 years old, and that
What? Where
really
were your
stuck
parents?
with me. They weren't in the room. It was VHS, and we dug it out. But it was really powerful, and that's the most intimate story between 3 people in a massive hotel. But it's so intimate and so sort of just brilliant, and sort of has humour in it as well, and it's just an extraordinary sort of story. But this was the first novel that I'd written. Wow, is this on? It is on. Hello. It's the first Stephen King novel I'd read, and it's just brilliant. And it just seemed so ripe and perfect to push into onto the screen, because it was sort of just such detailed, layered characters that that were sad and incomplete and brilliant in their own ways. And the scripts were amazing as well. So.
One thing, that David and I very much wanted for Brady was an actor who could carry both the horror and the empathy. And he does that. You do that. And that was essential for the part. Somebody who could go out there and appall us, and at the same time, just a good guy, you know, walks into the diner and goes, "Hey, how you doing?" You know? Yeah, so it's great. Couldn't ask for more.
Holland mentioned kind of being worried about, you know, the toll it might take on you emotionally playing a role like this. I'm curious for people like Harry and Kelley and Brendan too. I mean, do you find that you take your work home with you? Was it hard to sort of decompress at the end of the day?
It was hard for me to decompress at the end of 5 months. That's basically the way it is, because you don't really go home. I was lucky enough that my family could come out. Mary was out, and then the lads came out one after the other at separate times. So I wasn't sort of, you know, homesick or bleeding for seeing the people I love or anything like that. But you're never really away from it. At least, you know, I'm not a very immersive actor ostensibly. I don't do the method thing, you know, purposefully. But you inhabit the place and the state of mind, and he does get a kicking from the start to the finish, really. And then what I found the difficulty with me and the brilliance of the writing and all the rest of it, and the trust that Jack brought to it, and when we all talked about it at the beginning, it was all about that this should not be an indulgence in horror. You know, I've no interest in that, frankly. I find it dull. And that really it's the fight for love, you know. And Hodges is a person who, you know, that character is there to continually poke at him and say, love is still waiting, love is still waiting, love is still intact in there somewhere. Don't give up on it, don't give up on it. And there are various people, Jharrel, Jerome, you know, become, you know, obviously the friend Pete and stuff, you know, Scott's character. And then Mary Louise-Parker comes on around, you know, and there's a kind of a beginning of faith again, a readmittance to it. So being dragged into a place, and I think it's similar, you know, on the other side of the seesaw with, you know, there's beauty to be found amongst all this horror. And that's what's really upsetting, because it means that you can't just retire into a fantastical place of complete darkness and evil. It's utterly compromised by the fact that there's always love in the room on both sides of the seesaw, as I say, and that you're tortured by the fact that you're not really allowed to just drift into oblivion. And I think that's really what it's about. So it doesn't really leave. I found it very affecting anyway, but not in a catastrophic way, just in a relentless way. So that by the end of the 5 months, I was a kind of a husk. There was nothing left.
Why is that funny? That's terrible.
Yeah. Cruel bastards.
I agree. I was husk-like towards the end too. I was staying the closest I've ever stayed to any location ever during this, which was about 67 paces from Hodges' house. My actual
hiding in plain sight.
Actually, hiding in plain sight, exactly. So there would be days, not often, but sometimes when I'd be filming around there, you know, or doing off lines for potential upcoming episodes. I would just get a little text and I'd walk over 5 minutes and then have a break, go back home. It was great. But it didn't help being able to sort of let it go in the evening, because I would be walking around the local area and literally be walking past Hodges' house and want to go in and do bad things. But I said this yesterday, but I will say it again because I think it's relatively funny. I found myself, not funny, but weird, watching the least empathetic TV shows I could in the evenings, which kind of kept me on an even simmer of zero empathy for the world, which were UFC fighting, Shark Tank, and Fox News, and just kept me perfectly, you know, perfectly on a simmer of psychopath. It was awesome.
And Kelley, for you, because in future episodes we do learn a lot more about your character, and there actually is a lot of empathy for her. How do you approach a character and you know that they might do bad things, but they're a person?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I mean the designers on our Merrick, our incredible production designer Hannah Bender, our hair and makeup team. You know, the set dressers, it felt like Drugstore Cowboy felt to me when I did that as a kid. It felt like I walked into a world that already existed. It helped me tremendously to have a place to work like that. And my story is really with Harry, and there's a place in the middle of these episodes where I have a little side story, which is an amazing episode that Dennis Lehane wrote for me that is just incredible. But I kept to myself a lot. We filmed in Charleston. It's a beautiful place. Bill Murray's one of my best friends. He lives there. And he was always trying to drag me out to some, like, let's go boating, let's do this, let's do that. But and I did a couple things with him, but I really kept to myself. She's a person living in her own world in a way. And it felt right to do that. I'm also not a method actor or anything, but I tried to look like the person who doesn't take care of herself, whose whole world is a living room, kitchen to get the bottle of vodka out of the freezer, and the upstairs to crash in. That's her entire world. So I kind of just kept to myself, I think, and I flew in and out of Charleston too. I had, I did that. So when I was there, I came into work and then I would leave. But it was a hard character to leave behind. I mean, I just kept myself in that sort of in that headspace for the whole time that we were working together.
Bill Murray is always trying to get me to hang out, and it's so annoying. That guy does not give up. He's relentless with his invites.
I know, it's everyone's dream, but let me tell you something. It's like spending an afternoon with a 13-year-old, Just saying. Oh, my God.
We have a couple audience questions, and I apologize in advance if I butcher anyone's name. This is from Anne. Wants to know if the plot will divert from the books, as in The Dome and The Strain, with added characters or changing the plot significantly, or is it going to stay fairly true?
I would say fairly true, season 1. And in success, we hope to have a season 2 and 3. Stephen has written 3 books in the Hodges trilogy, and we hope to realize all of them. But the second book, we followed the architecture of the first novel, Mr. Mercedes, and even though details changed, I mean, like Ida being born and various things like that. So, but overall, it's the architecture of the book and the plot of the book. Season 2 is going to be a little trickier because of a number of things. He's in a coma. Hodges doesn't come into it till, halfway through. It's a wonderful book. But there's going to be, we've got some ways that we're going to reinvent it a bit and still keep a lot of that story. So fairly, yes, I answered that, sort of. Where's Bill Murray?
Oddly enough, I wouldn't be shocked if he was here.
Yeah.
Are you already preparing for season 2, or is that...
Emotionally. Creatively, the wheels are turning, yes. And, right, Chris? Yeah. We all are very hopeful, although not official, and feel great about what we made. Did you guys like it? Thank you. Every episode just keeps building.
I only intended to watch the first one so I wouldn't screw up and accidentally reveal something, and they sent me 4, and I just tore through them in one night, and then had really terrible dreams, but it was worth it. This is actually a question for all the actors from, I think it's Max Swassa? Is that correct? Did I pronounce that correct? Yes. Great. What would you recommend we as performers do to protect ourselves on set when performing a stunt, even if it is just a love scene? Oh, I like thinking of love scenes as stunts, yeah.
Really?
They require a lot of choreography.
They do.
Don't trust anyone. Make sure you check everything yourself, because it's a crazy place, and it's so many days it seems like the easiest, safest place to work imaginable. But some days there's loads of stuff going on and people are tired and it's at the end of a thing, and it's genuinely something which I didn't think about a lot early on, but something which I do think about every day now when I go and just check around that there's nothing dodgy lying around, because you do in the real world, and you often end up doing things because they're like, yeah, the light's going, can you run over that building and grab that and then swing down there, and you're like, yeah, of course I can, but you might not be able to. So you just got to check.
I think everything needs to be rehearsed as far as stunts, dangerous things, and you need to make sure if you might need a pad on your back or whatever. I did Charlie's Angels, again with Bill Murray, and Cameron Diaz and I had a fight to the death, and our Chinese amazing, team of, they do The Matrix and they do, all those great movies, Hero and all of that. They didn't think she was hitting me fast enough, even though they're speeding, she was pretending like she was punching me in the face. And they told her to do it faster. And she said, please, can we rehearse this? And the director said, no, we just got it. We have to shoot it. And she looked at me and I said, just go for it. And we thought she broke my nose. I mean, it was like such a bad, I learned so much, I was just, actors are always trying to be, just, we're a team, we'll get it done. I'll go ahead and do it, I trust you. And she punched me so hard in the face, I can't tell you. And then the worst part was, I just was like, oh my God. She got up and ran into her trailer and stayed there the rest of the day, and they kept yelling at me, like, look what you did to Cameron. See, sometimes you can't win. But I think, you have to rehearse everything. Everything, just go through the motions if you want to save yourself emotionally or whatever, but just make sure that, what could happen is kind of covered.
I think we're all going to sing that song because there's so much pressure on a movie set sometimes about time. You don't know who's actually, having the authority in a given moment. Something has to be rehearsed very well, but also you'll have people sometimes, stunt coordinators, who will tell you how something has been rigged and they'll show it to you, describe to you how to do it. As Harry says, don't trust anyone else. You must explore all equipment and all movements yourself on your own timing and be satisfied yourself that you can handle rigging, that everything is strong, that it will hold you. You must protect yourself very thoroughly, and you have the right to do so. You must take whatever time you need to feel confident before you do anything that is a little bit out of the ordinary in terms of movement or handling equipment or, running or being hit. Please do that. You have the right to do that.
Yeah, I'd echo that. Just there's always, as Kelley was saying, there's always that instinct to step into the gap. And there are times you're going to have to step into the gap, and there's certain things that are going to have you just have to commit and stuff like that. But if you don't rehearse, you're an idiot. Like the notion that you're going to save time and you're going to beat the light at the end of the day and lash off something that's going to keep you, with your heads, sort of in a cast for the next 6 months, there's not saving a lot of time, really. It's, there are a lot of things can go wrong. Like I've had a few things gone wrong, and the difference between some crews is that they'll fess up. You never quite know. Actually, in Turbulence,
Go on.
All roads
I
lead
actually
to
blew my
turbulence.
thumb off. I was grabbing somebody and a squib went off on my thumb. I didn't get feeling back into it for 2 years. But what was great about it was that it was kind of just grabbing somebody a bit low on the chest and not being fully aware. But again, it was the adrenaline. Yes. The great thing about that, though, was that the people came over immediately and said, that was my fault, I let it I said, no, my hand drifted down, it was me. They said, no, we let it go, it popped off by mistake, it should not to do that. And it was an accident, that was grand. I had no real issue with it, but in as much as possible, what everybody's saying is true, don't feel pressurized to go cowboy. Because it's going to take an awful lot longer to actually, sew your thumb on or put your nose straight, right, than it is to actually just take your time and do the bloody thing professionally. And it's their fault if it's not being done professionally, not yours. If they haven't got the rig up and they haven't got the setup, it's their fault. Don't take on the blame of it. That's always the instinct. Yes. Because we're guilt-ridden sort of entities at the best of times. And we want to do the best, and it's usually our fault. But it's not your fault. If it's not, the setup is wrong, don't do it, basically. If you can be strong about that.
I just want to add, the exec producer, director point of view. And I completely concur with everything they said. It's one thing to say to an actor, the sun is setting, we really have to do this shot. And if it's acting, and if it's nothing else, as much as I don't ever love saying, I designed the show so we would never, ever have to work in panic mode. And I think we pretty much achieved that. But there are those days where, things are going and the sun is setting and whatever. But I would rather push the shot if it involves any action and the sun is setting and we're not ready to do it. And the brilliant AD we had and my other producers in Charleston completely agree, and I'm sure our studio does. You never do anybody, and also as a director, I sit back and I say, okay, I'm going to watch this, guys, you run it. And when it has to do with stunts, and then I speak up if there's an issue before we do it. But you're not doing anybody a favor being a good scout and being a good person and saying, yeah, I'm going to take it for the team. Because you know what? If God forbid anybody gets hurt, it's terrible. The tragedy that just happened on Walking Dead. They are walking dead from that, everybody, the cast and crew, from that tragedy, and nobody, it's never, ever, ever, ever worth it. So stand up for yourself and say, you know, I'm not comfortable yet.
That kind of leads me to wonder about, you know, your stunning opening scene had to be so expertly choreographed. How
We raced through that.
Let's
go!
It's just
The sun
extras.
is rising, let's go!
Most of just extras, most.
Yeah. How long did that take to shoot?
That, 2.5 days. Jenna? 3. Oh. Oh, I'm thinking of the gala. That was 2. Yeah, it was. We were doing. Oh, that's right. It was 4 originally. It was designed in 4, and then we found a way for in prep, not to squeeze it while we were shooting it, but to design it in such a way that it would still be exceptional, but we could achieve it in 3 nights, which we did, and we never raced anything. And it was properly set up and designed shot by shot. And even those scenes where everybody was running, and a lot of those people who were jumping over barricades were stunt people. We had the appropriate number. But also there were a lot of extras in there who were just turning and running and, you know, in the mayhem. And thank God we didn't have a twisted ankle, because those things can happen no matter how prepared you are.
Well, the great thing is when you work on a good show, you know the difference between cowboyism and professionalism. You know, and in fairness, like, Jack was really rigid about all that stuff, that there was none of that cavalier kind of carry on. And there's no necessity for it. When you work with great people, you understand there's absolutely no necessity for risk-taking of that nature. And it's the cowboys who are doing it. So again, just to come back to the guilt thing, don't take it on board. If the stuff is being done in a kind of a cavalier fashion, it means the guys are not taking care of you. So don't take it on board that it's up to you to fix it, because if something happens to you, they'll just replace you. You know, if you get knocked down by a bus, they'll just get somebody else and they'll paint in something in post. Like, you know what I mean? You've got to actually protect number one, really, in those situations.
And nobody will hire you again because, oh, remember that person who got hit by the car and had never done it before, but they said, oh, I'm game. You don't hire that person back, and it's so you got to take care of yourself. And consequently, you're taking care of the whole movie, not just yourself.
And we have 8 more episodes of this season to go. I believe there's 9 total.
10.
Really?
Yeah.
Wikipedia lied to me.
Really?
I'm
we have
shocked.
to fix that.
Well, I might have actually input it myself. So, where would you like to see? Oh, actually, can you tell us, what can you reveal about where your characters are going without incurring the wrath of the audience network?
My character's gone to hell. There's a continual struggle. You know, it's a very kind of clear and simple setup, as you saw. You know, there's kind of a somebody who's lashing out in, you know, despair, and there's somebody who's trying to retrieve themselves from despair, and it's like everything else. I think that's a continuum. You know, it's both sides of your brain, really. Hopefully, if that's where we get it, and you know, mixed up and all in between. But it's a continuum.
And will Ida and him get together?
Well, if that were so, I wouldn't say it here, but I will say that she persists. That she continues to care about him, that she's a pain in the ass to him and will remain so. And she's troubled by him. It isn't just that she is a busybody and has good advice for him. She he can affect her feelings. It's a real connection. So yeah,
There's
she
that
carries
great-
on.
Similarly.
Not to spoil anything, but there's a great line where Brendan says to her, "You're the most dignified person I know," something like that, and it's
She gets under his skin for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, and there's a certain integrity and goodness about her, you know, despite all the kind of unexpected.
Yes, what?
The idiosyncratic nature of her personality.
Watch out.
There's a clarity about her in terms of her own integrity and goodness that is so relentless. And of course, you're going to love somebody like that. It wouldn't be Hodges if he didn't.
I am shipping you guys so hard. It's not even funny.
With Deb, I think, the opening, the way you meet Deb in that scene is just so shocking. And I'm a mother, it was really something to see. And I found my way to how she was or is the person that she is. But I know more about her journey, and I think for the audience, these 10 episodes really tell her story in such a beautiful way, and she becomes extremely three-dimensional. She's a very vulnerable character, and I don't want to reveal too much about it, but you learn a lot more about her past, about who she is, and about what she wants and what she hopes for, and her relationship with Brady starts to feel weirdly, you get not used to it, but you kind of fall into it and then find yourself going, wait, no, that's so wrong. But there's a way that they are, that starts to make some sort of twisted sense, I guess. That's as much as I can say.
In a detective thing, a lot of times you become a functional guy who's got to report this and make this plot point move forward. And what was really great was as the plot of the show goes forward, Brendan's character and my character, who are old partners, we become together again and find each other in our relationship. And Jack and Brendan and I were always constantly looking to make sure we were working on relationship and how when Brendan and our characters were in the past and how that affects now and what we're going through. So it was that relationship that really got to be the focal point of what I got to hold on to in the show, which was really unusual when you get to do just sort of a character, a detective on a show thing, and so it made the show really, it kept getting richer and richer as we went forward, and the relationship redeveloped.
I know you've obviously worked with a lot of amazing actors, but do you ever have moments when you're like, oh my God, Brendan Gleeson's my scene partner?
Man.
Yeah.
I got this.
Jesus, Brendan Gleeson.
In a word, yes. In a word, yes. To get to play, and the way the script is structured, I always got to tell him he was wrong. I always got to tell him what he should be doing, right? I get to go to set and tell Brendan Gleeson off today. So, no, it was really
it's always given out to me.
Yeah, it was really a great thing. I'm Brendan Gleeson. No, yeah, I've always been a big fan of Brendan's, and
It's turbulence.
It's a dream job. Dream job. Yeah.
Yeah, he chews me out pretty well, pretty often.
Oh
too.
yeah.
What was the question again?
What can,
I'm at the end.
I know,
I'm at
the
the
poor
end.
guy's at the end.
I am at the end, and they're different answers.
That's
so.
because-
Means we're not answering it then because you don't know what it is.
Well, you were answering them slightly differently. It's great. I'm just listening. What's the?
It's and frankly, you're at the end because I'm scared of you.
Oh, the development. the development of the character. Who in this room has read the book? Okay, so not too many, but I'll try not to spoil anything then. He starts off in quite a good mood, I think, Brady. I think he's in quite a good place. He's things are going smoothly at home. Mum's not drinking too much, and job's going well, and my ice cream round is allowing me to spy on Hodges. And I'm setting up for, he talks about in the book that if the massacre he used a sledgehammer, the subsequent suicide of the woman whose car he stole was like him getting her to am I, yes, that's, yeah, him being involved in her committing. Am I allowed to say this, Jack? Yeah? No? All right, okay. Well, anyway, he's got different methods of approach.
You can tell them about Brady's production of the Fantastics that he mounts.
The what?
Yeah, Brady and his mother do the Fantastics at the Bridgeton Players. Oh yeah. That won't spoil anything.
Oh, that. Yeah, Brady starts a band. No. But it's just sort of deepening. He is in quite a good place, genuinely, when he starts, and he starts to unravel. His sense of control on things do start to become a little slippy, and his mind does as well. So.
Well, I want to remind everyone, I believe it premieres this week, right?
The 9th.
The 9th of August 9th.
Yes.
Again, Wikipedia. I'm so sorry.
Tell all your friends
Yes,
and family.
please. Spread the word.
DirecTV, Audience Network.
I can't wait to see where it goes. I'm so excited. Thank you guys so much for being such a great audience, and thank you guys for being here.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.